You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey, GH fans, I have got a comings and goings update. It is confirmed Steven Lars Webber is headed back to Port Charles, which we kind of suspected from the moment his sister Liz Webber name dropped him the other day. It's Belinda from Soap Dirt, and we're going to talk about what happens when Heather Webber's son returns now that he's out of prison, and a little look back at the character if you don't remember him that well. Just to confirm, it will once again be Scott Reeves playing Steven Webber. He stepped into the role in 2009. If you forgot who Steven is, well, it's another child of Jeff Webber's. So Steven and Liz share a father, just like she and Hayden Barnes do. They all share Jeff as a dad. So yeah, Steven Lars is also Hayden's brother, but they've never met. But I don't expect to see her back unless they recast her, because Rebecca Budig is on contract over at Bold and the Beautiful and doing a great job. So here's a quick look back at Steven Lars' bizarre history. So Jeff was cheating on his wife, Monica Quartermain, and he got Heather Webber pregnant because he was just a cheater. And Jeff wouldn't leave Monica, so Heather took off to New York. She gave birth to Steven, and she sold her baby on the black market. And it turned out a couple from Port Charles bought the baby. And in a weird twist, Heather was their nanny taking care of her own biological son, Steven, but she didn't know it for a while. Just, it was a baby they had adopted. And Jeff wanted custody of the kid he knew that Heather was carrying, but she lied and said their baby died. And Jeff's real grief and Heather's pretend grief bonded them, and he left Monica Q and he married Heather. And it came out that Steven Lars had been sold and adopted. That's when Jeff found out. And it got really messy. Heather was suspected of murdering Steven's adopted mother, but it turned out it was Heather's own mother who murdered the adopted mother so that Heather wouldn't do it. It was just messy, messy stuff. Jeff Webber wound up getting custody of Steven, and he left town with him. And then we didn't see the kid until he came back as an adult in 2009 with Scott Reeves in the role of grown-up Steven Lars. And he landed a job as the GH chief of staff, and Liz was so happy to have her big brother in town. So it's kind of interesting to have Steven Lars back just as Lucky Spencer returned, because of a lot of rich overlapping history for these characters. When Liz was engaged to Lucky and was cheating with his brother Nicholas, she had a nervous breakdown, and Steven was totally there for his sister. He took care of Liz's boys, Cameron and Jake, while she was at Shady Brook Mental Hospital. Steven was also right there for Elizabeth when she got pregnant with Aiden and didn't know who was the father. So way back then, he fell for Olivia Falconeri, and they got engaged eventually. And Steven was also there supporting Liz when Jake died. Very tragic, a death that GH later undid in this bizarre retcon. And his nephew Jake dying absolutely crushed Steven Webber because he adores his nephews. But he was sitting on a dark secret that came back to haunt him, a very soapy secret. Steven confessed it to Olivia before it all came out publicly. So when he was in Memphis working as a doctor, there was a young girl who needed a heart transplant or she'd die. He had a patient who was a match, and this guy was a multiple murderer. So Steven intentionally killed this criminal patient so the kid could have his heart because he knew they were a match. And you know, that flew under the radar for quite a while. So meanwhile, his nutty mom, Heather, had been in Ferncliff, and she was set to be released, and Steven took custody of her. But then the Memphis police came to arrest Steven Lars for this patient death. And his ex-girlfriend in Memphis falsely confessed to killing the patient and then killed herself. So the police let Steven go, and then he came back to Port Charles. But Heather's presence in his life was messing things up between him and Olivia. They split, but then Heather went on a crime spree. She shot Luke Spencer. She OD'd Olivia on LSD, and she was suspected of faking the suicide of that ex of Steven's from Memphis that had confessed. So just by the way, a lot of these crimes, these very violent crimes, were pre-hip replacement. That's why this retcon on saying this heavy metal poisoning made Heather crazy just really doesn't hold water, because she was violent and insane long before she had her hip done. Anyway, Steven cut Heather out of his life after she was arrested yet again, but she escaped and did more crimes, including assaulting her son, Steven. She escaped again and tried to stab Olivia, but wound up stabbing her son, and Steven barely survived, and he was set to marry Olivia, I think at the hospital. But then the Memphis police came and arrested him again after they did a deeper investigation into the patient's murder. In the end, Steven could not live with the guilt and pleaded guilty, and he's been in prison since 2013. But Liz was excited to tell her pal, co-chief of staff Terry Randolph, that her brother Steven Lars was out of prison after 11 years. But Liz did not think he would return to Port Charles because of his mom, Heather, who's still there. Also, he lost his medical license for murdering a patient, so kind of awkward. Since his release, not that long ago, Steven has been in Arizona, but now he is coming to town. On Thursday, October 24th, Liz's big brother returns to Port Charles, despite her thinking he would stay away. It's interesting timing because Heather is finally sane because of this retcon and hoping to get out of prison herself. Scott Reeves has already taped scenes with Allie Mills, who's the new Heather. And when he was on before, of course, it was Robin Mattson in the role. And Scott Reeves, by the way, is real life pals with Jonathan Jackson and Stephen Burton, who play Lucky and Jason. He also starred on the ABC series Nashville alongside Jonathan Jackson. Both of them are musicians. And if you didn't know it, Scott Reeves is married to Missy Reeves, who plays Jennifer Horton Devereaux over on Days of Our Lives. They've been married since 1990, and they have 5 grandkids, and they are insanely happy they live in Nashville. As for Steven Lars Webber, I'm super excited to see Liz get some family back in town. Maybe the powers that be at GH are trying to make up for killing Sam and firing Kelly Monaco by trying to do better by another longtime vet, Rebecca Herbst, who hasn't been getting any storylines as Liz either. Not that one substitutes for the other, but I know fans have been upset about both these characters being on the back burner for so long. And given Heather's likely and imminent release from prison, bringing back Steven Lars right now, I think, is an exciting choice. It's just too bad that 2 of his 3 beloved nephews are now off screen, but maybe they'll return to visit Uncle Steven Webber if he stays around.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.